veil is lifting. What does that mean? I've been saying it for years in my videos. The veil is lifting. Dimensions are shifting. Our reality is literally changing before our very eyes. A lot of the times I'll cover the language of symbols here on the channel. And the language of symbols is a very real language. But for centuries, we never knew about this. But for centuries, this knowledge wasn't for us. This has been carried through the secret societies, the high-end Masons, the Illuminati, if you will. Really, all these secret societies that form the pyramid of the beast system have had access to this kind of knowledge for centuries. One place we find the language of symbols predominantly placed is in all forms of media, movies, television shows, commercials. It's all over the place. This is esoteric knowledge. This is occult knowledge. This is knowledge that's been held from us, the public, once again for a very long time. But since that veil is lifting, I believe all this knowledge is coming out, and people are changing. We're seeing some people become much more evil. We're seeing others become much more light, more sensitive, more kind. I personally believe this is the time of the wheat and the tares, the sheep and the goats. The veil is lifting. One of the hardest parts of this whole subject for people to grasp is that we're literally seeing biblical prophecy play out right before our very eyes. We're living in that season. I truly love my subscribers, and let me tell you why. Because my subscribers, for the most part, the mass majority, are so on point with their own knowledge and their information of the things they share with me. And you've really helped me out. I try not to look at it like I'm the channel guy and you're all my subs, so I've always tried to see this as a community. Many of you out there are very bright, you're very spiritually awake, you see all the things I see and more, and you share this with me. And this is why I'm making this video. Somebody actually shared a new movie with me. They told me to check it out, and it was called The Veil, and this is actually a screenshot from the film. So the movie itself starts off and kind of continues for a little while as something we've seen before. It's about a cult leader, right? And he's out in the woods and he has his followers and he has his own way of doing things and he's very charismatic and, you know, is he crazy? Is he not? Is he gifted? You know, it's the whole thing. And we've seen this play out. It's a very common theme we've seen in a lot of other films throughout the years. But this movie has quite a few twists, and really what I wanted to get to is the speech that this man right here gives at the end of the film. So if you're planning on watching this film, spoiler alert, because the message that this movie is really trying to get across, once again, it's called The Veil. It's about the veil lifting. They even mention that multiple times throughout the film. But I believe the main message they really wanted to get across with this was from the speech at the very end of the movie. There's something I want you to notice here just from this screenshot of him, and this goes back to other subjects I've covered in the past with symbols. Around his neck he has a few little amulets there. There's an ankh that's hanging a little bit lower, but right there in the top is a spiral, and you can see just below that is the serpent. Now I've covered the spiral in a recent video as well. We see the spirals all over the place, right? And once again the spiral is a portal. Another example of portal symbolism that we're seeing all around us right now is this very common hand sign you're seeing right here, and that is a hand sign. Now you can't get carried away with this because some people don't understand this stuff. It's also a part of our collective consciousness, so some people may just kind of randomly hold their hands like that from time to time. However, I don't know about you, but I see that everywhere. All kinds of shows, I'm always seeing people holding their hands like that now, right? And what that signifies is the pyramid in front of the reflecting pole, or a black mirror. It's a pyramid on top of a pyramid. It's as above, so below. The other part of that is intention. That's one thing that's very important with these occultists that purposefully do this kind of stuff. They put all these symbols in our movies and TV shows, but they're doing it for a purpose. They're doing it with an intention, okay? So that's another part of all this. Reminded me of a video I just did a few days back about Survivor and some symbolism I found on that show. And once again, if you take a look right here, this was during one of their challenges The initial setup of this puzzle, that's what it is, it's a puzzle. But at the very beginning, it actually looks a lot like the LHC. That's what I thought immediately. I was like, oh, it looks like the LHC. It's kind of weird. I had no idea what images exactly they were going to put on there, but as you can see, this is what they came up with. So we had the spiral, or what reminded me of the LHC, CERN. And then right here is the completed puzzle, the snake eating its own tail. It's also the cancer symbol, the 69. And on the keystone for the Freemason arches, it's the same symbol. It's the cancer, the 69. It's also Enter the Dragon. It's the beast entering through a portal, entering through LHC. And these are just my impressions of things, the way I feel about these things and how I see them, how I view them. But it was the speech at the end of this film that really hammered it home, really nailed it for me. And oftentimes we need that. We need confirmations when we're looking into this language of symbols. It can be complicated. It takes logic, reason, critical thinking, but most importantly, it takes spiritual discernment to understand these kind of things. Again, there's one scene I forgot to mention that happened very early on in the movie, where he's talking to his flock, his congregation, and he takes a Bible from one of them, and he basically tells them, there's nothing in this book we really need, and he throws it over his shoulder, so you know where he stands on things. But then as the movie goes on, turns out, he can heal people. There's a lot of Christ symbolism with him, not saying he's Christ, but of course they're playing off of that, right? So lots of people die throughout this movie, and basically in the end what you find out is that this guy has figured out a way to come back, right? And he's figured it out for other people as well, but you have to kill them first, and then they can return. And that's explained in this speech and the sequence that plays just before it at the tail end of the movie. And this right here is the cult leader. He came back in the form of this person who had been killed earlier in the movie. So again, that's kind of what he's doing. He's killing people, they're killing other people, and all these people are coming back. So this right here is pretty much the beginning of that sequence, and the camera starts moving in closer and closer to this guy, and he keeps getting darker and darker and shape-shifting. And now you can see the spirit of that cult leader. You can see him, right? Even more so now. And then right there it is. And just before that short sequence began, the character said in a really dark and demonic voice, "The veil has lifted, the fallen shall rise." So in that moment alone, he kind of answered our question, right? But wait, there's more. Once again, he's telling you that that's what it is. They are taking on other forms. They're killing humans to replace them, right? To interbreed with us, to become one like us. Hybridization. They look like us, but they're not. They're hollow on the inside, right? And again, that goes back to the wheat and the tares. If you're not familiar with the wheat and the tares, please look that up. They're beings that live among us. They look like us, but they're not. They have no soul. They're not of God. They're hollow on the inside. So obviously, because of copyright, I can't play out the sequence for you, but I do have a short audio clip of his speech in the end, and I've got some screenshots I'm going to just kind of play out as he's giving his speech. And again, this speech just spells it all out for us. And it's really creepy because as he's doing it, you find out basically there's dead bodies all over the place, right? Somebody, they don't show you, the screen goes black, but somebody killed all the cops, and there's just people dead everywhere. But at the very end, as he's giving his speech, he's talking about, rise up, to all these people. And all of a sudden, all these dead bodies start to rise, looking like zombies, and just kind of following this guy, right? So once again, we have that theme, that hive mind. So check this out.
Children of the void, sons of chaos, it is the last hour. The head is complete. We have been remade by Yldebil in the image of the seven archons who created and enslaved this world. We are the hidden masters. We are the architects of anarchy. We are the dark fucking soul eaters, lords of the unrighteous. Today, our new reign begins in a new reality. I told you we'd be deathless. We just need new shells from time to time, and plenty of souls to eat. Our legion rise from behind the veil to reap the pain that we have wrought. The seven shall become a vast multitude. These are the days of vengeance and wrath. The deathless aeon has begun!
And I thought this was interesting. It's from a website called Filmmaker, and they're actually talking to one of the filmmakers behind the movie The Veil. And check this out right here. He's talking about approaching the actor Thomas Jane, and Thomas Jane is the guy that played the cult leader. He says, then I went to Thomas Jane and I said, are you interested in this guy? He read it and committed the next day. By that point, we had the rewrite, in which the Jim Jacobs cult leader role was more of a religious fundamentalist. And Thomas said to me, look, I really like the story, I really like this character. I want to do it, but I want to adjust this guy and make him more of a spiritual guru who has his own views on everlasting life, spirituality, heaven and hell, and it's not Bible-based, but listen to that, it goes back to something even earlier, the religion of the fallen. Thomas did all this research into archaic forms of spiritualism and ancient religions of the Egyptians, and I don't even know what. I just wanted to show you that as a confirmation, and I see everything in the spiritual, so I certainly believe that spiritually this Thomas Jane was led to research this stuff or to interject these ideas into this film. And again, I know that may seem like a reach to some people out there that aren't spiritual, but this is just the way I see it. And this isn't the only example of this. Once again, I've shown this on my channel time and time again. But now I want to show you another connection. So now here's another classic example of how these themes are played out in film, right before our very eyes, but a bit subtle. Not everyone's going to catch this, right? This is a movie called Borgman, and I actually saw this a couple years ago. I was really blown away by it. I almost made a video about it back then, but for whatever reason I moved on to something else. But this is the way a lot of my videos work. I'll remember these things. You know, I categorize all these things I see throughout the years and little puzzle pieces, right? And then occasionally something will come along and be like, oh, okay, that reminds me of this. And that's what happened in this case. This reminded me of the film Borgman. In many ways, Borgman, the film, puts it right in front of your face, but again, it's just subtle enough to where I don't think a lot of people are going to see it. Even the opening title tells us a lot, but as you can see, it starts upside down, and that's Borgman, right? And then it slowly turns right side up. That theme plays throughout the entire film. Once again, this is as above, so below, or everything turned upside down. And what was so genius about that really brief sequence is that really sets the narrative for the entire film. It really is all about that, about as above, so below, and the connection to the fallen. And if there's any question about that, the very next scene is this right here. And they descended upon the earth to strengthen their ranks. And that spells it all out for you. I mean, there's really no mystery there. And once again, this goes back to that Borg mindset, that hive mindset, even back to the film The Veil, right? It's all about the numbers, about them coming back, them returning, wiping out humanity and taking over. That's very much what this film Borgman is about as well. In the very beginning of the movie, there's these three guys here, and they're all getting weapons together. One of them's a priest right there, of course. They're getting all these weapons together, they get a dog, and they're going hunting for something, so they start going through the woods. And it turns out that Borgman, that character, is actually living under the earth. So there's the metaphor, right? Again, it spells it all out for us. And what you're looking at, this is a shot from behind the priest. He takes an axe and he's actually hitting the ground, and it suddenly collapses. And then they don't see the guy, but Borgman's in there and he kind of escapes, and then he makes his way on. And as some of you know, that I have a background in film. I have a film degree. I worked out in California for a while, and some of this. But the truth of the matter is that I am a big fan of the creative arts. I'm a big fan of good acting, good writing, good directing, whatever, right? As long as it's not filled with all of this Illuminati stuff or this New World Order stuff. And unfortunately, it's really hard to find anything nowadays that doesn't have some element of that stuff inside. So long story short, Borgman finds his way to this wealthy family out in the middle of the woods, and slowly but systematically kind of destroys their life. And it's really weird because there's a few scenes throughout the film where he's doing this, and again, that shouldn't really leave too much to your imagination, because you may have seen some of these old pictures of these imps or these demons. It's usually associated to some form of night terrors, these things sitting on the chest of the sleeping woman. So that's happening in this film as well. And it's really interesting because you find out that what he's doing is he's invading her dreams. He's giving her nightmares about her husband. And this happens throughout the film. So she'll wake up and just start freaking out on her husband, and this guy has no clue what's going on. And no one had any idea whatsoever that Borgman, this demon, this fallen one, whatever you want to call it, was in the room causing all this chaos. And there's a screenshot where he's doing it again, and he has these helpers. These guys are helping him out. He actually has a small team. As the film goes on, you find out more about how he acquired these people. That's very interesting. Now, something else that's happening throughout the film is this man's relationship, Borgman, his relationship to the children and the family. He's always telling him these really dark stories. Here's a scene right here where he's talking about Jesus. He's talking about a little boy that was lost and needed help, and he said that Jesus wouldn't help because he's only interested in himself. So once again, for me, this goes beyond the screenwriter, the director, the this, the that, or whatever. This is a spirit. This is intention, because there's plenty of confirmation throughout this entire thing. But as the movie goes on, his two helpers from that screenshot I just shown you wind up taking the kids. They tell the parents that they're going to take the kids to school that day. Instead, they lead them to this hole. They take them underground. They pull out these surgical instruments, and they don't really show you the minor surgery they do, but they do something to the back of these people's necks. And then the people are never the same again. They're basically drones. They're like little zombies. So once again, it's about these fallen ones, these demons that are taking over humans. It's a Borg mindset, right? It's a hive mind, wiping out humanity and taking them as their own. I also thought it was interesting to note that throughout the film, the way they'll mark their victims is they put a little X on one of their shoulders. The X has a lot of meanings, still the Saturn, I mean the list goes on. Those are two pyramids connected at the apex, so once again you have the as above, so below, the mirror images, right, the portal. And those are the main points I wanted to cover for the movie Borgman, or Borg Man, that's the other thing. It's right there in the title. It's the Borg Man, and we know about the Borg, right? We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile, and that's from Star Trek. So once again, that's that hive mind mentality, right? Taking over everybody, wiping out humanity, you know, assimilate or die. And this really is a very common theme. Once again, we're seeing more and more over the last few years coming out. This is that occult knowledge, it's that esoteric knowledge. All of this stuff is coming out. You've even seen it with the black goo. Now, I've covered the black goo in some videos. Lots of other people have covered it as well. As with any other symbol, there's a lot of different meanings behind it. The black goo I've always seen as kind of a Borg system. Once again, all-encompassing, or a hive mind. Just like these other themes we've seen throughout this video, in connection with the fallen ones. The interbreeding, the mixing the iron with clay. Here's just a few examples of where you see the black goo. They even call it the black goo helix for that show there on Sci-Fi. But we saw the black goo in Prometheus. I thought this one was interesting. This is for the X-Files. And if you're familiar with the X-Files, there's a black goo in the X-Files also. It's an alien hybrid type goo. And this is the stuff that gets inside people and turns them, right? It assimilates them. It's also interesting that they have the dead bee up there in the black goo, right? So there's the hive mind. This is from a game that's been around for a really long time called Magic the Gathering, but even one of their cards from way, way back, they have the death mark, and you find the black goo. Of course, you've seen the black goo in Spider-Man. It's another one from the X-Files. I recently saw it in a commercial for a new movie coming out called Suicide Squad, and this is one of the comic book people, or comic book heroes, I guess, or anti-heroes in the new movie, the Enchantress. In a wider shot, you find her, she's underneath the pentagram there and surrounded by the black goo. If you want to go real old school, we had the black goo with the Penguin. Tim Burton's version of Batman had that from way back. And of course, there's just a few more from the X-Files. One more I'll show you too. This one really blew me away. I don't know if you ever saw this movie or not. I wouldn't recommend it. It's just really artsy and weird, and didn't really seem to have much of a point. But it did have an agenda. And that agenda, once again, is all about the what? The black goo. So in the movie, Scarlett Johansson plays this alien character that goes out and seduces men. She brings them back to her place, wherever that is, leads them out into this dark void, and then they eventually get sucked up by this black goo. They get assimilated. Once again, we see that idea, right? And then there's a shot of what it really is. So here's your demon, here's your fallen one, right? It's the black creature, the blackened creature, the black goo creature wearing a skin suit. So again, we find that theme playing out in our media. So that's it, folks. I will leave you with that. Once again, we see these themes in all kinds of things now, all the time. The veil really is lifting. I've been saying it for a few years, And I feel like we've seen it in a lot of my work, and not just mine. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but a lot of other people out there as well. A lot of people are waking up to the truth about this spiritual war that's happening all around us, this spiritual reality that's unfolding before our very eyes. Yes, a lot of people can't see it, but more and more are waking up and seeing this stuff every day. And it's incredibly important, in my opinion, to understand this stuff, to see this, just so that you can understand the times we're in, where we're at right now. All knowledge is coming out, all truth is coming out, but you have to be prepared because there's a real battle taking place here. Lots of deception is out there as well right now. Lots of darkness is rising. So these are the days it's very important, once again, to utilize that logic, that reason, critical thinking skills, your spiritual discernment. But stay safe out there. Take care. Thanks for checking out the video, and I'll talk to you all real soon.